Stay tuned for Legal Straight Talk here on Long Island Cablevision Channel 20.
Okay, I need my kaleidoscope of colors to lead the way. I'm riding in my car and I'm coming on around the bend. It's a chase, this twisted race, I'll be on top again. Gonna be the whole 9 yards or nothing.
Truth. That's key. When you're dealing with, as an attorney, I need my client to tell me the truth.
Good morning, I'm Tom Mealy, and this is another edition of Legal Straight Talk. Good morning, Brett.
Good morning, Tom.
What's going on?
I'm looking forward to the show.
You know, today, and I got to first tell you that last week's show on immigration was phenomenal. You know, I had an opportunity to watch it, and so informative on the different aspects of what immigration, the truth of immigration is, and how careful some of these people have to be.
And everything changes so often.
I know. From
politically to what's happening with the immigration laws, and it really is important to go to an attorney as opposed to some immigration service non-attorneys.
You know, what I found real interesting about it is when you were talking about going to non-attorneys and how a lot of this stuff is cash deals, it gets me to wonder, you know, what's going on behind the scenes. And are these people, hey, listen, you know me, I'm always the glass is half empty. So, you know, I wonder sometimes is this another scam? Or, you know, are these people out there just to take the money of these hard-earned immigrants that are trying to make it in this country? And I guess the best advice would be seek out somebody who is an attorney, sit down and talk to them and find out what your rights are.
And it's like that, and it's like anything, like you always say to me, you get what you pay for.
Without a doubt. And leading into that is a segment into today's show based on people and telling you the truth, because sooner or later it's going to come out, and we're going to talk today about how important it is for a client to tell us details of any situation and how it can either make or break their case.
Well, that's true. Even from the beginning of the sign-up, when you first have the case, when first somebody comes in, it's so important. A lot of clients or potential clients, they get so afraid to tell you whether they had in the personal injury field, whether they had prior accidents or they had pre-existing injuries from whether they slipped and fell, workers' comp. They figure, you know what, if I don't say anything, out of sight, out of mind.
Well, we both know that that's not the case.
Maybe out of sight initially.
But definitely what happens, people, especially with personal injury law, and that's my area, you know, obviously there's a million different areas of law, but what happens with personal injury is if you have ever been involved in an accident before, whether it's a fender bender, whether it's a workers' comp case, a slip and fall, whether it's $2 worth of damage to your bumper or $100,000 damage, it's coming out because there's something that's out there called SIB.
Exactly.
Or central indexing.
Especially if it's been reported, and you know as well as I do, most people, after they get in an accident, one of them is going to call.
One of them.
Because they're going to say, sure, as soon as we leave here, you're going to change your story. I'm calling the police, and which you should, because stories change. Witnesses leave. You need a police officer. That's what they're trained to do.
So eventually your insurance company, either you're going to call your carrier and report, hey, listen, I was just hit in the back, no big deal, I'm fine. But what happens is when you have a case where there's a serious accident and you're seriously injured and you say, well, you know, I'm not going to mention that, you start to now attack the credibility of your own self. But instead of saying, you know, yeah, it was a minor little fender bender and I reported it to my insurance company, but there was no injury. Now,
And they find out that you were
Right.
treating, you missed work.
Right.
And it's
well, what I was getting to, let's assume that the new case now that you're into goes, let's say it's pretty severe. You have fractured arm, fractured neck surgery, back, whatever the case may be. And let's assume now you're going through depositions, which we talked about in a show a couple of shows ago on when we had Effie Cho on.
Right.
But let's assume you're in a deposition right now, and you say, "Well, geez, I hadn't said anything, and it's not a big deal. I'm not gonna get into any trouble. Nobody knows about it." But now the guy asks you.
Now, all of a sudden, as the attorney, now we've discussed your case along the way, paralegals, your doctor. Now, let's even go before the deposition, even before we get up to that level. You're treating with your doctors because you're injured on this case. Now, you've read thousands of medical reports. One of the questions in the very, very beginning is past medical history.
Well, I'm assuming, no, the point I'm getting at with telling the truth here, and I think we're getting off the subject here, my point is that even if you didn't have an injury on that particular case, my point is that the defense is going to ask you, were you ever involved in an accident before? You're going to think in your head, no. You told us no in the beginning. You told the attorney no. You told your doctor no. Now, picture this. You're at trial. The defense attorney has you up on the stand. All of a sudden, you've got all the jurors out there in the box.
Let me set it up for you even better.
Yeah, because you know where I'm going with this.
I know exactly. So what happens now is, now you have your prior transcripts, which you've sworn to and you've reread is accurate. Right. Now, 6, 8 months, a year later, 2 years even later, you're at trial. Defense attorneys, have you ever been in an accident before? And you say, nope, no, I have not. They'll say, okay.
All of a sudden, he goes, the magic wand.
No, he goes, now they say, okay, Judge, I'd like to mark this into evidence.
Right, there you go.
It says right on top, certified public record from Department of Motor Vehicles, stamped by Albany with the proper seal. And now they say, I'd like to show you a report. Did you ever own a 2010, Honda Civic? Yes. Did you live at this address, which you've already previously established? Yes. Do you remember me asking you, have you ever been in an accident? This isn't the first time I asked you that question. Didn't I ask you also at the deposition? You say yes. And there you were sworn just as you are here.
What happens? That jury
now you're
pegs
a liar.
you as a liar. So how do you expect that little lie that had nothing to do with this case because you weren't injured, now all of a sudden that jury is now going to look at you that you are a liar. So that if I was on the defense or you were on the defense, the attorney's going to turn around and say, well, wait a minute, Mr. Jones. You lied about that then. Am I correct? He's not going to give you...
stumble and say, well, I wasn't lying.
He's not going to give you that chance, though.
He's going to say, true or not true?
Right. And you have to answer that question, yes or no. Mr. Jones, you were lying, yes or no?
I didn't say lying. You were in an accident. Isn't that true? Yes.
But
so when I asked you before, that wasn't the truth.
That's
now,
right.
I can't call you a liar, but if it walks like a duck and it smells
so
like
what you
duck.
did, people, is that very simple thing that you had. You just had your great case here with no issues behind it. Now the jury's thinking in their head, this guy's a liar. And as a smart defense attorney, he would turn around and say, well, are you telling us the truth now? He's planting that seed so deep into that jury that it's starting to get embedded into their head.
And you know where else it can come into play? Let's say you're in Nassau, Suffolk County, Queens, where it's a bifurcated trial. That's just fancy legal mumbo-jumbo, meaning it's two separate trials. They try liability, who caused the accident, who's at fault, and then they damages. Now, let's say it was, in this case, this hypothetical case, we're saying, our client saying, the other defendant ran the red light and then hit us. And let's say the defendant saying, no, I had a green light, you went through the red light.
Right.
Now it becomes what? Now, I wasn't there, the jurors weren't there, and the defense attorney wasn't there. The only two people that were there, assuming there's no other witnesses, are you, our client, the plaintiff, and the defendant. Now, if you're lying, or they feel that you're not telling the truth, they're going to say, no. If he's lying about that,
he's lying about
this, and now that aspect of liability. You don't get to the how much is my case worth if you're deemed liable, or let's say the jury finds you 70% liable and they award you $100,000. Well, 70% off of $100,000, now you're left with $30,000. So it does make a difference.
Sure.
That's the one scenario where we're just talking just on a base level like that. It could be a workers' comp accident. It could be thousands of...
Let me tell you something else, Brett, about telling the truth about an accident. You know, people think that because you were in an accident prior to this and you may have been injured, but you don't want anybody to know about it because you think they're going to commit. There's something in this world called an exacerbation to a pre-existing condition. And what that simply means is, let's assume that you're in an accident and you have a bulge disc in your neck and you treated for that bulge disc. And let's say 5 or 6 years ago, you know, the insurance company says, okay, Mr. Jones, I'm sorry for your bulge disc. Here's $25,000 or $30,000. Now, you don't disclose it, or you do disclose it. So the importance of disclosing it is, yes, I was involved in an accident. A reputable law firm, the first thing they're going to do, Brett, because we talk about this all the time, is we're going to now order those records. And I'll tell you why. We're going to order the records so that we can see about that bulge disc. Now, that bulge disc just now turned into a herniation. That, my friend, actually helps you because now we can show a past accident that was simply a bulge disc now turning into a herniation with possible impingement. So now that actually helps you that injury was severely now exacerbated as a result of this new impact.
Now, let's take it a step back, just on the same that you're talking about prior injuries to on the bulge, to now a herniation. Let's say when you went to the doctor, when you went to treat with the doctor after the accident that you just got in, and the doctor's on his questionnaire and also in his report say, and past history, and you say, never had any problems, never any prior accidents, never any...
Sorry about that.
Never any prior accidents. So the doctor puts no prior accidents, no prior history. Now, what happens is when the doctor's report is given a lot less weight when the other side says, but doctor, the doctor's on the stand, he's being cross-examined, says, doctor, were you aware that the client had a prior injury to his back? He says, no. Didn't you speak with the client? Didn't you take a history? Wouldn't you agree with me, doctor, that the history, your client's prior medical history is relevant? Of course, the doctor has to say yes. So as part of your protocol, doctor, don't you ask your client and you spend time and you instruct your staff? You know, they build it up and about the importance of prior medical history because you would have, and of course the doctor, he or she is going to say, of course it would be. So doctor, in this case, what was your protocol? Did you ask the client? Yes, I did ask the client. Because the doctor's not going to say he didn't when he did. And the client, and what did the client tell you? Never had a prior. So now you say, wait a second. This doctor's not even aware of how it could have affected.
Sure.
Now,
sure.
But now let's go as even another step. The case is in litigation, meaning a summons and complaint was filed. The others, defendants, put in an answer. Now we have to do what's called a bill of particulars. Bill of particulars, in just layman's terms, we have to particularize your injury. In the summons and complaint, we said as a result of the contact between the cars, my client or the plaintiff was injured. Now, when they put in an answer, the defendants ask you to do what's known as a bill of particulars to particularize the injury. Now, if the doctor puts that it's a new injury, okay, and we plead it, or in our bill of particulars, we say it's a new injury, not, as what you called it, an aggravation or an exacerbation, okay, and we never amend or supplement our bill of particulars saying that it's exacerbation or aggravation, and the jury finds that it's an exacerbation and aggravation, what happens? You get $0 because we only pled it as a new injury as opposed to an exacerbation.
That's right.
So you're not fooling anybody, but not only are you not fooling anybody, you're wasting my time, my firm's time, the doctors, you're wasting everyone's credibility, all because you did not want to divulge or tell the truth. And you know what? And it may be that now it's just like it's the difference between a hard-boiled egg and a soft-boiled egg. If you drop a hard-boiled egg on the ground, it might not break. If you drop a soft-boiled egg and you drop it on, it's going to break. But that's okay because the new accident may have exacerbated it, made you worse. We've seen many cases where now the client needs to have surgery. And it's all because previously they had an injury that now became worse based upon.
But if it's not documented, you got a problem. Another thing, leading up to telling the truth behind anything that happens. In this business that we're in, a paper trail is always very necessary. If we don't have a paper trail in order to quantify what took place, the insurance companies are very intelligent. What they do is they look for these paper trails. And what's very important is we tell everybody, when you're involved in any kind of an accident, and again, going back to whether it's a workers' compensation, a slip and fall, or whatever the case may be, and you're taken to a medical facility, and at that medical facility, you are hurting, you have to take a step back, kind of like jump out of the box for a minute and look at yourself and say, what is hurting? I'm going to tell you why. If you go there and you say, my back is hurting, but you leave out your extremities, you're dead. If you go there and you say, my neck and back is hurting, but or my mid-back, and you don't mention your lower back, you're dead. And the reason that you happen is that when we come and you go to your doctor and you start treating, and the doctor's treating you for these areas, if you never mentioned the extremity part until a month later or 2 months later, there's no way that carrier is going to take that as it happened during the accident.
Not only that, you're a no-fault carrier who's paying on your medical bills. Let's say all of a sudden now 3 months into it, you never made a complaint, it's not documented that your knee hurts, your left knee hurts. Why are they going to pay for treatment on it? It wasn't causally related. In their eyes, they're going to say, we're not going to pay for treatment. And let's say your knee is so bad now that you have to have some type of surgery, arthroscopic or whatever it may be. They may not pay for it, or they'll say, it's not causally related.
When you're in that hospital room, we're going to give you a couple of tips about different parts of injuries, because sometimes you're going to have pain in areas that you don't think are relative to where the damage may have taken place. And any smart law firm will know, especially who deals in personal injury law, that if you come in and you tell me that these fingers, these 2 fingers here are bothering you, right here, and your neck is bothering you, there is a better than average chance, believe it or not, that you hurt your elbow. Now you sit back and you say, well, how did I hurt my elbow?
On which...
Well, no. Well, these 2 fingers are going to give me just from the elbow. And I'll tell you why. What happens is in your neck, you have your nerve endings that go down through the spinal canal, through the cord. And what happens is with these 2 fingers, the nerve that comes out of the neck comes down and comes through here. There is a tiny little canal that the nerve travels on the outside, and then it kind of like goes under a tunnel and then comes back out again, and one nerve comes here, one nerve goes here. And what happens is when you trap that nerve or you hit it, it's called an ulnar nerve. When you hit it and you trap it, you damage the tunnel. It's like the tunnel collapsed. So you're thinking that this is all coming from your neck. If you feel this when you're there, you have to let them know, you know what, these fingers here are tingling. They're bothering me. That's going to tell any smart doctor that there is a strong probability that you damaged your elbow. Now let's assume that you did hit your elbow in the accident, but you totally forgot about it, all right? Or you're more concerned with your neck and you're in the hospital room. If you don't mention that your elbow hit or your elbow hurts, and down the road, these fingers start to, and what happens is the motor sensory nerve actually affects it over time. If that motor sensory 6 months down the road, 4 months down the road starts to bother you, and these happen, and that elbow was never mentioned, the carriers are going to jump on that, and they're going to say, well, wait a minute, you're mentioning this 4 months into the deal here. How do we know what happened?
But you know what? Any treating doctor that deals with recent trauma, which is a car accident, a lot of times they'll see in their reports, they ask the client or the patient, well, how did the accident happen? It was a hit in the rear, it was hit on the side, the passenger side. Did any parts of your body come into contact?
Yeah, but the problem is, Brett, people, they leave out the most important thing.
But anybody with trauma...
But what happens if he's a schmuck doctor? What happens if you go to a doctor who, you know what, is just into it for making the money and billing the insurance companies?
Well, let's just say it's a PCP, primary care physician, that's not familiar with...
Trauma.
Not familiar with trauma. That could happen, and that's why it's very important that when you do seek treatment, that you do tell them all the things.
You know, I don't depend on doctors. I depend on me. It's the same with your insurance. I don't depend on somebody to protect me and hope that if you hit me, your policy is
But you know
huge.
what? But
And we went down that road.
that's also part when a client comes into us. I can only use us for example. My office, the Harrison Law Group. That what happens, whether it's me or anybody in my office, they're going to go down a litany of questions. And one of the questions is, what parts of your body hurts? Do you have any tingling in your fingers, in your hands, in your back, in your foot? Because that, at least now, when we speak to the doctor and we look at the reports, why wasn't it mentioned?
But we know this. See, the point is yes, we know it. But if they go, you know, if they have an attorney of their choice that they decide to go to, and again, we don't know who that attorney is. We only know what we know.
But don't let an attorney or their staff rush you.
Or a doctor.
Rush you saying, listen, we got to move on. Right?
Yeah.
You know, you should spend the time. They should be familiar with your case.
You know, and the reason I'm talking about an older nerve case is we had a case
that
came in today.
Well, your wife had a serious case one point.
Right.
So you know exactly. You even told me I actually had to cook for a week, or I had to cook for a couple of months.
No, that never happened. No,
you ordered in food.
I burn water when I cook it. All right, but what happens here with older nerve issues is an older nerve is remember as a kid we used to hit your funny bone?
And you go like this.
It's the
and you
same,
go like
it's
this,
the
you
same
like
scenario. Right. It's the same scenario, but hitting an elbow or hitting an extremity in a car accident is very possible, especially in a side-end impact. Not so much in a rear end, but let's assume that you're driving down the road for 5 minutes and this car is not paying attention. It's on their, you know, they're texting their thing, they're on their cell phone, and they run through the light and they side hit you. What happens if you think about your body at that point, your body's going to scoot off this way. This elbow is shooting out that way. There's a good probability that, I mean, how far are you away from your driver's door? Your elbow when you drive?
I'm right on top.
Less than maybe 5 inches, 6 inches?
But you could also have it on a slip and fall. How do you fall?
You fall, you fall on your, yes,
no, but
or your
sometimes
elbows.
if you fall on your side, you bang your elbow real bad, and you say, you know what, it's just a little sore, and it doesn't go away.
I think the best
you
thing
have
they need
problems
to do
gripping.
is you need to sit back and analyze exactly what is bothering you when you're in that hospital room, because when you're in the hospital, that is going to be the meat and potatoes. That's your plate. You got to make sure that everything on that plate is you talk about, whether it be a soft tissue issue going on, or whether it's an extremity that got hurt, or whether you banged your toes. You have to mention it, because we may have to come back
it's also
to it.
important when you talk to the treating doctor, you know, that you go to on a regular basis. You also talk to them about activities of your daily living that you can no longer do. For example, you may tell the doctor, you know, doc, when I go to pick up something with my right hand, it's like I have no strength, there's a numbness. What that does, that cues in the doctor to say, you know what, he may have a nerve problem. The doctor may say, do you ever have any problems on your elbow? Do you have here? Did it hit and anything? By giving the doctor that little bit of information, diagnostically, just think of it like a car. I'm no mechanic, and you know I'm not handy, but if the mechanic says, when you turn on your car, does it do nothing, or does it like cough? When you say it coughs, that tells the mechanic, just like the doctor, I should be looking towards these things.
That's the whole point of this conversation. You know, one more thing about telling the truth and telling, you know, people what's going on. You know, my mother always told me, you know, tell the truth and you'll never have to worry about being caught in a lie. You know, in these particular cases, telling the truth can only benefit you. Trying to fabricate or hide something, if you think that you're smarter than these defense attorneys or these insurance companies,
or the jurors,
you better go back to school, because you're not. I don't care how good you think you may be, but you are not.
But I think what we've shown is that one little either intentional lie starts to snowball from, it goes downhill and it becomes a large thing that mushrooms, and then you see how it affects your case.
You're right. Okay, thank you for, this is another episode of Legal Straight Talk. I got to tell you, you know, we've been getting a lot of emails lately on people that want to hear different topics. I know that next week we have something coming up with Al Hedayati again. You want to tell us a little about that?
Well, I think next week we're going to talk to, let's say now you've already gotten divorced, you already have child custody orders, you have everything. Is there anything you could do post divorce. Post orders, whether it be family court and or Supreme Court, what's the difference in a divorce matter? Can you change, modify in any manner, and how do you go about doing it, and when would you want to do it?
Yeah. So stick around for Legal Straight Talk every week. I know that in different areas we're on at different times, but if you have any questions, feel free to email us or give us a call, and we'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Until next week, I'm Tom Mealy.
And I'm Brett Harrison.
We'll see you next week. Have a wonderful day.
Take care.
Give my regards to Broadway. Remember me to Herald Square. Tell all the gang at 47.
Hi, I'm Jerry Parisi. Welcome to tonight's version of the Long Island Filmmaker Show, now known as the Filmmaker Show. And that's